Welcome back to the show, DBE fam. So today's episode is a little different. We're talking about something that I've personally been going through without giving you details yet because I'm not ready to share. But in what I've been going through personally, it has brought up so many feelings, brought back so many feelings of not feeling like I'm enough. Full transparency. This is something that I've struggled with my entire life. It's this feeling of not being enough, whether it's not feeling worthy, not feeling valuable, just like at my core, when we peel the onion layers away, it's just going down to I just don't feel like I'm enough. And that might sometimes result in not feeling deserving or worthy or comparing myself to others or just even my past self. But in something that I've been going through, which is completely out of my control. And I logically know that it is not my fault and I am enough regardless. I'm inherently enough. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast. I can't help but still feel the feelings that are bubbling up of questioning all of that. And so, in that questioning and in that feeling, the last few weeks that I've been in this pretty uncomfortable space, I figured, why not make a podcast episode about it? While this is kind of cryptic because I haven't shared yet, it doesn't really matter. You can still get it because I am sure, I am certain, it's not even like a thought in my mind. I am certain that if you're listening to this episode, you're a human, which means that you have definitely experienced these feelings before. And for you, maybe they've come through in a little bit different of a way. Maybe it's like different verbiage that you use. So not feeling loved, worthy, enough, valuable, deserving. Maybe there's underlying like resentment, anger, fear, uncertainty, shame, guilt, like all of these words. They're kind of low on the vibrational frequency scale. The ultimate state of receivership is gratitude, right? That is like number one. If we were to draw out a triangle, the top point of the triangle facing north or up or towards the sky, the top point of the triangle, the highest frequency, the receivership state is going to be gratitude. And if you bring that down, I believe there's 22 different levels in psychology that they teach. If you bring that down 22 different levels, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong. Might be 21, might be 24. Down at the bottom is going to be, grief and resentment and all of those things. So somewhere in between is where I've been floating, and we really want to be. I didn't Google this ahead of time. I learned this, my gosh, like 7 years ago. We want to be in like the top 7 or the top 9. So that's the state that we want to be in. And because we're humans, we're also meaning making machines. And what that means is that our self-worth that we feel can rise and fall based on the beliefs that we think about ourselves. The funny thing is that we've talked about this before too. Thoughts don't become things. Before they're thoughts, they're actually beliefs. So what you believe to be true in your internal world as well as your external world is going to be what actually creates your thought pattern. Your thought is going to be creating your feeling, so your emotion of how you actually feel. The feelings that you feel then create the behavior or the decision that you make, which then turns into the action that you take. And then ultimately, we both know that means that is going to be the result that you do or do not get. So those deep-rooted subconscious thoughts that oftentimes are living underneath, like the dirty flooring inside of our head, what we want to do when we're rewiring our brain and we're reprogramming our thoughts through neuro-linguistic programming is we're basically pulling up that dirty, moldy flooring. We're clearing out those old beliefs. We're installing new beliefs about ourselves and the world around us. And then those new beliefs, again, create those thoughts. What we think about ourselves is how we ultimately feel. When we're thinking that we're not enough, we usually feel like garbage. Maybe we're depressed, we're not motivated, we're not excited. Those feelings are, again, going to be our behaviors or our decisions. So if we're not feeling excited or like we're enough or motivated, then we're probably going to behave and decide to do things like skip the gym and eat the pizza and the ice cream, which is our action that we take. And then, of course, the result that we do or do not get comes from those things. So visually, I don't have a chart for you because this is a podcast, but that's what it would look like. And I'm not on YouTube. I'm not drawing something on YouTube for you right now. So in the phase, in the season, in the moment, in the time that I feel like I am not enough, because that does happen from time to time because I am human, what do I do? What do I do? Because if you're anything like me, you're like, give me the chart, give me the to-do list, give me the 5 steps, let me figure it out, let me do my way out of this. There is an element of you can't do your way out of this, and the only way out is through, and you got to feel the feelings, right? And also we can do certain things. And so that's what I want to share with you today. I want to share with you 5 different, call them things, questions, or actions that I take in order to move myself through those sort of dark, for lack of a better term, for the context of this episode, darker seasons. So the first thing that I do is I ask myself this very simple question: what evidence do I have in my life that I am not good enough? What evidence do I have? What evidence do I have that I'm actually not good enough? Right? Because what we do as meaning making machines, as little humanoids, is we create fact and fiction. We create stories for things we don't understand. So if you're like me and you're type A, kind of, control freak, love of visual learning, create a T-chart for yourself. On one side, it's the fact, and the other side, it's the fiction. What are the facts that you're actually not good enough? And then what is the fiction or the story that you created that you're not good enough? Then get your lab coat and goggles, get your microscope and your magnifying glass, and examine the actual facts. Chances are that you're creating a lot of stories that are fiction based on the feelings that you're feeling rather than them actually being facts in the world, internal or external. So are these just thoughts that are coming up from feelings? I don't feel good enough. I don't feel pretty enough. I don't feel smart enough. I don't feel experienced enough. And so that feeling is then creating this story loop in my head that, what's the point? Why am I even bothering? They've been doing it longer. No one's listening to me anyway. Or is it true that no one's listening to you anyway? That you're not deserving and worthy? Chances are that it's not the fact. It's most likely the fiction. So number one is, what evidence do I have in my life that I'm actually not good enough? Chances are you're not going to come up with much. Right. And just because you lost the sports game, or because you put yourself out and put yourself out there with an offer and nobody bought, that is not a fact that you are not good enough. That is a fact that you didn't make the cut on the team because maybe your skill set wasn't there yet. Maybe you didn't have a great day that day when you were trying out. If someone didn't buy from you, the fact might be that you just need to work on your messaging, or you didn't have enough runway or time leading up to nurture your audience, but not that you're not good enough. The second thing that I do is I really sit with, am I comparing myself in an unfair way? Am I comparing myself to my old self in an unfair way? Am I comparing myself to other people in an unfair way? i.e., am I comparing my weakness to their strength? That's not fair. That's apples to oranges. Am I comparing my weakness, my thing that I'm challenged by, my skill that I don't have yet, my newness to something, to someone else's expertise, 20 years in the industry, reps 10,000 hours that they've put in? I mean, right then and there, that's just permission to like take the load off your shoulders and be like, well, that's ridiculous. Why would I do that? Why would I be comparing my strength, or I'm sorry, my weakness to their strength? And also recognizing everybody's on their own journey, everybody's on their own path, and reminding myself, as difficult as it is, it's not a race, nor is it a competition. At the end of the day, a rising tide lifts all ships. We should be helping each other. We should be collaborating. We should be outstretching our arms to help people across the river, or get on our boat, or throw them our life vest. Because when we work together, we're going to go so much farther, right? That's the African proverb. Alone we can go fast, but together we can go far. Something like that, right? They say something like that. The third thing that I do is I ask myself the question of, what's the worst thing that could happen if I'm not perfect? What's actually the worst thing that could happen if I'm not perfect? What is going to happen? This one's going to sting, so brace yourself. I warned you. Perfection is the lowest standard that you can set for yourself. Perfection is the lowest standard that you can set for yourself. Now, if you're a recovering perfectionist like me, that one stung, because you're like, wait a minute, here I am thinking that perfect is the best way, the only way, the right way. And when I reach perfection, I will have made it. But Jess just told me that perfection is the lowest standard. Like, what the heck? Perfection is the lowest standard that you can set for yourself, because we both know that it cannot be reached. Perfection cannot be achieved. So by you words are hard. By you setting perfection as your goal, or as your whatever the word, as your litmus test, by you setting perfection as the barometer to success, whatever that is in quotes, it's ultimately like you're giving up before you've started. You're giving yourself a safety net. You're giving yourself an out, because you know deep down inside, even if it's on a subconscious level, you will never reach perfection, because perfectionism doesn't exist. So perfection it's basically the same thing as you throwing in the towel and just not even trying. I say that with love, but like, holy bananas, I'm not wrong, right? So asking yourself, What's really the worst thing that's going to happen if you don't reach perfection, if you don't hit the goal, if you don't hit the marker of whatever success is to you? What's the worst thing that can happen? And with that, perfection being the lowest standard, also ask yourself, truly sit with it, go there, like go to the dark, unhappy place of what is the worst case scenario. If you've ever heard my story or you've ever heard me share this, this is my story. This is not from a book. This is the truth. Back in 2016, I was driving to work. I was an elementary school teacher and I worked as a personal trainer on nights and weekends. And I was driving to work as an elementary school teacher. It was my 8th year of teaching, and I was pretty unhappy. I had been unhappy for about 2 years. I really wanted to go do something else. And I had been working on my quote unquote cute side hustle since 2012. So I was already 4 years into this cute side hustle of slinging $79 ebooks and selling accessories on Etsy and hosting women's only fitness-based field trips every single month and retreats in Costa Rica. I had all these little side hustles. I was in network marketing, and all these little side hustles had all these little light bulb moments in my brain going off all the time, like little fireworks on the July 4th, going, wow, what about this? And what about this? And I bet I could do that. And I want to create this. And I think I'm meant for more. And the ceiling in the elementary school is feeling really low, literally and figuratively. Like, don't know the last time you were in elementary school, but golly, those toilets are low to the ground, right? And so I felt like my world was caving in. I'm so grateful for my job. Do not misunderstand what I'm saying. I had a 7-minute commute to work. I was living paycheck to paycheck, the American dream in a house I couldn't afford, with an incredible husband whom I loved, who was commuting an hour and a half each way and would get home at 9 o'clock at night. The American dream, truly. For me, it wasn't working. I was very unhappy. So while I loved what I did and I loved my kids and I loved teaching and I loved phys ed, I was very unhappy in my job, in my day-to-day life. I felt unfulfilled. And so I was listening to a podcast, driving to work, coffee in hand. I will never forget this day. It was October of 2016. This is my truth. This is my story. And this woman who was a teacher was also selling jewelry on Etsy. Did you hear me? Because that's what I was doing as well. So I'm like in the dashboard listening to this episode. And this man interviewing this woman said to her, if you went all in for 1 year on your jewelry company on Etsy and it didn't work out, what would be your worst case scenario? So she said, well, I've been a teacher for a decade. So if it didn't work out, I would just go get a different teaching job in a different district. I'm sure I could get hired somewhere. And I'm like nodding along. I'm 8 years in. I'm a phys ed teacher at an elementary school who also sells stuff on Etsy. I'm like, okay, I could do that too. And his answer changed my entire life. He leaned into the microphone and he said, wow, how does it feel to wake up every day and live in your worst case scenario? What? She just told him that if it didn't work out, she'd just go back and get a teaching job, which is what she was already doing every single day, day after day, with the Sunday scaries. And he held up a mirror and he reflected back to her, well, okay, I mean, that's already what you're doing. So why wouldn't you give yourself a chance? When he said this, I pulled the car over on the side of the highway, Route 287 in New Jersey. If you know, you know. I texted Mike and I said, I can't do this anymore. I was bawling, crying. It was just weeks later that I walked into my principal's office and I resigned with no plan other than I'm going to do whatever it takes to make ends meet. Because if bills that have to be paid are the only thing keeping me from my worst case scenario of not having a home, not being able to pay bills, having to work a million jobs, having to ask friends and family for help, like all of these things. And when I realized that for me to get to my quote unquote worst case scenario, a lot of chips would probably have to fall. And I'm so privileged and grateful that I can say that. But it was like, wow, Jess, if you leave teaching today and you don't get a job tomorrow, I'm not actually going to just be out on the streets without food in 24 hours. Like I have space. I have time to figure things out. And so long as I'm willing to remove my ego and put it aside and ask for help and take jobs that I think I'm above or too smart for or too experienced for, as long as I'm willing to put myself out there and admit that I'm wrong and that I don't know the answer to everything, then I'll be okay. And I wasn't living in my worst case scenario. It just wasn't my best case scenario, right? So asking yourself that question of what's the worst thing that could happen if you're not perfect, or what's the worst case scenario? Gosh, that flips the script on everything. The fourth thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to focus on my strengths and my accomplishments, both external result accomplishments, but then quality accomplishments. So I can sit here and I can create a brag book of all of my achievements and my strengths and everything I've done. I can ask people in my life, friends, family, clients, what do you think of when you think of me? What are some of my strengths? What are what's one word you would use to describe me? Gosh, as someone who loves words of affirmation, those types of exercises are so filling for my soul. But and also don't let that be the external validation be the thing that makes you feel worthy. Don't let that external validation be the marker of when you don't feel worthy. But yeah, you can write those awards and those accolades and have a brag book, but then also what are the qualities about you? For me, I care deeply. I care so deeply about everybody in my life. I over deliver in friendships. I over deliver in my business. I have such good integrity. My gosh, I honor my word. There's so many qualities about me. I'm a really good listener, right? There's so many qualities about me that I can consider to be strengths, not just magazine covers and financial milestones and awards and accolades. So what are your strengths and accomplishments? How do others see you in the world? And then the fifth and final thing that I do, and I think this is one that maybe if you're still listening, you've been waiting for this one, because when you're in it, you are in it. When you're not feeling good enough, when you're not feeling worthy, when you're in a dark place, I'm not saying clinically depressed, but when you're in a season of like, oh, I just don't care, you're that empathetic, like it's gotta get better than this. You're probably asking yourself, how do I get out of it? Right? How do I improve how I feel? How do I make strides moving forward? What do I do? And so some of the things that I do when I'm feeling this way, and this isn't written from the lens of a doctor, it's just what works for me. I take a break, especially if it's with the business. Like I shut it down, not close the business, but I shut the laptop. I walk away. I go outside. I move my body. There's self-care. I phone a friend. I call up for therapy. I change my physical environment. I change my friend circle. I invest in myself, whether that's time, energy, or financial. I'm also really hyper aware of what I'm consuming. For me, I know that when I'm in a loop of comparison and not feeling like enough and being super triggered on social media, that's usually a pretty good indicator that I'm either consuming too much or I'm consuming the wrong things. So often we forget, especially on social media, you're actually the aggregator of what you see. Like we all complain about the algorithm, but you have as much control over the algorithm as the algorithm has control over you. Listen back to that. You have as much control over the algorithm as the algorithm has control over you. I'm not talking about people seeing your content and likes and shares. I'm talking about what you see, because what you follow, what you engage on, the accounts that you engage with and comment and DM and save and share, social media is going to show you more of that stuff. So if you're spending time on accounts that are not making you feel good, you don't need to spend time on those accounts anymore. You can mute, you can unfollow. You can be really, really intentional with what it is you are consuming and the podcasts that you're listening to and the books that you're reading. And the final thing, and this is the biggest one. If you've gotten this far, bravo to you, because this is it right here. When I want to improve how I'm feeling, when I'm feeling stuck and not enough, I need to take action. Ugh, she said it. It's decision making. The faster I can make decisions, the faster that I can take action, the more that will breed confidence and clarity. ABC, action breeds confidence, action breeds clarity. If you've ever sat in a season of indecision, a night of indecision. I don't know. Should I go to the party? I don't really want to go. I know I said yes, but like I'm in my pajamas. I don't feel like putting makeup on. Or where should we go to dinner? I don't know. Where do you want to go to dinner? I don't care. Of course you care. Well, we just had Thai food. I don't want Thai food. I thought you said you didn't care. I want sushi, right? The longer that we sit in these indecision moments, the more draining it is on our minds, on our emotions. It takes a toll. And if you've been sitting in indecision for any amount of time in your internal dialogue, should you do something or should you not? Should you put this thing out or should you not? Should you join this program or should you not? Should you move across the country or should you not? It is exhausting. And oftentimes, even when we make the decision, sometimes the result is out of our hands. The outcome is out of our hands. So you make the decision to finally take action on something, like you apply for the college and then you wait. and you wait to hear back if they accept you. And it's in the waiting period where even after you've made the decision, you've ripped the Band-Aid off, when there's a waiting period that is outside of your control, that can be equally exhausting. So getting into the practice and the habit of making decisions and moving forward and taking action, it keeps you in momentum. And like I said before, the only way out is through. So if you're feeling stuck or not enough, the worst thing that you can do is sit around. And I know that when you're in it, because trust me, I'm in it right now. When you are in it, that seems really counterintuitive because you're like, literally, Jess, the only thing that I want to do is sit on my couch, eat some Ben and Jerry's, and watch some Netflix. And I hear you. I am you. I feel you. I see you. I get you. And so what I take with me is something that one of my very first mentors told me back in 2014. She said, give yourself a 5-minute pity party, cry it out, complain as much as you possibly can to a loved one whom maybe won't judge you, or just to your teddy bear or to the mirror, complain to yourself, cry it out, have that 5-minute pity party, and then get up and move. Pull your big pants up and big girl, big boy pants up and move. It's not about getting the result immediately. It's just taking that next action step. So I will be sharing soon because I can feel it coming and I want to share soon. And I'm so grateful for all of the love and the messages, especially with all the crypticness that I've had recently on social media. But just know that everything that you see is not always the truth, right? There's like Instagram versus reality. And while I'm always vulnerable and authentic, and I'm always truthful and never out of integrity, there is a business that I get to continue to run. And while there is a business I get to continue and run for the 3 minutes out of the day that you might see me on Instagram stories, I am also a human for the however many other minutes we get in a day. 525,600 minutes. Is that in a day? I have no idea. That sounds like a lot. It probably is, right? So subtract those 3 minutes out and all those other minutes, however many minutes it is. I'm a human first. And so I have been going through a season of not feeling like enough. And I'm not sharing that so that I can receive DMs, right? I'm sharing that because I'm sharing what I've been doing. So the question of evidence, what evidence do I have that I'm not enough? Am I comparing myself to my past self or other people in an unfair way? What's the worst thing that could happen if I'm not perfect, or the worst case scenario if it doesn't work out? What are my actual strengths, accomplishments, and qualities? And then finally, what can I do to improve how I currently feel? What things can I do to support myself? I hope this episode was helpful. I really, really do. Because I know that usually when I'm feeling something or going through something, there's a pretty good chance that someone in my world is also going through something. So that's it. That's all that I want to say. I see you. I love you. I'm sending you so much love. And as always, cheers to your evolution. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to me if you shared it on social media, tagged me at I am Jessica DeRose. Let me know what you're moving through. Feel free to DM me. You can always shoot me a DM. I'm always here to talk. Let me know which question or questions here that I shared today really hit you, really hit home for you, really moved something for you, because that feedback lets me know exactly what you want to hear more of. And I want to continue to make the best episodes that are actually going to help you in your life and your business. So the feedback would mean the world to me. And if at the very least, you share that you listen to this episode, then I can personally DM you back and just say thank you for listening and connect with you on a one-to-one level. I'm over at I am Jessica DeRose. I can't wait to hear from you. And as always, friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.